Everyone, and welcome to the Foster Files, a podcast about animal rescue and welfare. My name is Kelly, and every week I talk about issues surrounding animals in this country and to the people who are passionate about making their lives better. Joining me today is journalist and author Patti Eddington. Her new book, Don't Look in the Freezer: The Very Strange Life of the Veterinarian's Wife, is available for pre-order now and has details about her life as the wife of a small town vet. Hi, Patti. Thank you so much for joining me.
Kelly, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I've listened to your podcast episodes. I love it, and this is the best way to end my day.
That's so nice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I am so excited to talk about your book. So, for those that are watching along on YouTube, you will see that I got an early copy of the book. I feel very special about it. And I'm about halfway through, and I love this book. I love this book. I really do. I really love this book. And I had kind of a thought on it. And I'd really like to get into that. But before I do, I want you to kind of give us a little bit of taste of what this book is about from obviously your perspective as the author and what motivated you to write it.
Well, I think what you just said is the most important thing to know. This is my perspective. There's many, many books written by veterinarians, veterinarian staff, and so forth. And I just wanted to kind of talk about what it's like to be the one person in a 3-person family who is not involved in the profession. I mean, I am, but people ask me questions all the time. I'm like, I don't know. You have to talk to my husband or daughter. It's the perspective of a outsider who's also kind of an insider. I see it all, I hear it all, and yet it's still a mystery to me, and a beautiful mystery, because the people who devote their lives to animals on a daily basis, I wish I could do it. I didn't do it, but I guess I'm kind of getting involved a little by being able to tell my side of it and the stories behind it.
I think you do it. I mean, I'm reading the book, and I think to say that you don't do it or that you're on the outside, to me, is such um it doesn't give a lot of service to the work that you did do and have done and are doing to support the work that your husband is doing. I mean, I think the reality of it is you were there, you were answering the phone, you were helping clients and answering questions, and you also raised a child who has a love and compassion for animals. And I'm certain that that didn't all come from your husband, Jim. So I think you are doing it. I
Oh,
do.
well, I'm glad to do whatever I can do. I have no medical knowledge at all, but I am certainly an animal lover. Someone asked me recently, about how that began. And I'm like, I think it's innate. I hope
Yeah.
that most of us come into this world with that. I know my little grandson James is he just turned 4, and he was in the living room the other day, and our Siamese cat Simon walked by, and he said, "Oh, Simon, let me pet your sweet face." And I
That's
thought,
so sweet.
well, he sees us loving animals, and he is at the clinic a lot, but I just think it's innate. And thank goodness. I know there's other people who aren't, but I don't like those people or trust those people. So I love animal lovers, and I know you're one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I am one of those people that I joke like a lot of people do. It's like I prefer dogs over people most days. So,
Most times, yeah.
but yeah, I definitely am. So I did mark a couple sections that I just found like sort of interesting. And there was one in the very beginning, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about this because I think when you're in animal rescue and in animal welfare, this is something that I think we all make a mistake of doing. So I'm just going to read from this section if that's okay. If you try, and I certainly do, it's actually very easy to anthropomorphize the appearance of animals. I believe a clinic cat we had for years, for example, was a dead ringer for actor Rupert Everett. So Rupert became his name. For a long while, we had a rabbit in our yard nicknamed Dyke because he bore a striking resemblance to the author. And the reason that jumped out at me is because I think one of the mistakes that we make sometimes in animal training and animal welfare is we give animals our human emotions and we give them our human tendencies. And then when they counteract that, we tend to feel disappointed because even if we're not doing it on purpose, we're doing it subconsciously. So, what is your personal take on that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, their appearances, like I say, Rupert had this cute little face and he looked like Rupert Everett and John Updike the rabbit and so forth. But absolutely. I mean, you can't do that. um, I named them that just because of their appearance. But they didn't really have any tendencies like humans. And Rupert was the dearest. We had him for so many years. Oh gosh, 15 maybe? I tried to count recently how many um clinic cats we've had, and it's somewhere between 15 and 20 throughout the years that we've
Wow.
had the clinic. Yeah, and they've all had such distinct personalities, and I don't remember naming anyone else after a person, but just Rupert.
Um, I love this one too, and I am reading portions of the book because I want people to get an idea of kind of the way that you talk about, being the wife of a vet, because I think it's so interesting. But this is about a dog that you had. I was standing in the bathroom, staring in the mirror, close to tears, and cursing my new pet when I felt a nudge. Kelly was leaning her muzzle into my leg. She had braved the scary steps to apologize. That's you anthropomorphize. What's the word anthropomorphizing?
Yes. I
Her.
felt like she had. She was so afraid of those basement steps. She had only been with us a day.
Yeah.
And
She was a much beloved and very sweet dog, but apologizing was something Kelly would have to do repeatedly in her life. First for the hair thing and chewing the covers off all my books. Next for eating the insoles out of Jim's work shoes and topping it off for dessert by gnawing on his fishing pole.
yeah.
I love that. I think I just love the idea that um even a vet has an imperfect dog and an imperfect kind of situation when it
Yeah,
comes
she
to their
was
pets.
Bernie. She was from a shelter, and I don't even remember why we named her Kelly. But we just love the name,
Because it's a great
and
name.
it's a
It's a good
great
name.
it is
It's
a
a solid
solid name.
Irish. Yes,
Yes,
very
and
firm
my
name.
father was Irish, and she was a wonderful dog, and she was our first dog um, that we ever rescued, adopted, and we had her for many years, and she was a sweet soul. She was a little Doberman cross. And we loved her dearly. She had a huge problem with flatulence. She would hide under the front desk, and our office manager at the time Brenda would be talking to someone, and people would go. She's like, "There's a dog under here, really, really. It's not me," but she was a sweetheart. We loved her so much, and my father just adored her as well. Um, she always walked with a at the end of her leash as far out as she could go, and she would list to the side. And even when she wasn't on a leash in our yard, she would list to the side. But yes, and we had her, many years. She died on right between Christmas and New Year's, and I always remember that we were having our Harborfront Air staff Christmas party that night, and one of our staff members had volunteered somehow to host it that night instead of us. And she passed away that morning, and I just remember that Jim could not even go to the party. He sent Molly and I. Molly was a little girl, and she was sad, of course, but he was so stricken. And I remember one of his good friends came over and sat with him because she was his best friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it is? Why do you think we love animals the way that we do?
Gosh, like I say, I think it's innate. Um, my theory about people who do love animals this way, and it's very informed. I'm certainly not a therapist, but is that we have all been damaged in some way, and we are always trying to be a voice for the voiceless and hope for those who don't have it, perhaps especially rescue animals. And I see it in our staff. They are to a one empathetic and compassionate. And we recently had a day in which, or a week, I should say, in which 3 days in a row a staff member lost a pet. And they each took one day off and then they came back. And of course, unfortunately, euthanasia is kind of a daily or a big practice and it's a daily occurrence. And every one of them took one day and came back. And they had to be in that comfort room when someone else was saying goodbye to their best friend. And they did it. And I don't know. I just think that the people who work with animals are just, something special. It's probably why I can't do it directly, but I can write about it.
Think that, like a lot of things, veterinary medicine is changing. We're seeing a lot of small clinics like your husband's. Look, and I don't mean small in, size or capacity to treat. I mean small in, small town, owned by the same person, that kind of thing. We're seeing a lot of those clinics turn into and be bought by these larger companies. And those probably my perception, and I don't know much about veterinary medicine at all, except for that I've been, taking my dogs to the vet for the last, 15 years. But um, I imagine that it comes with some good and some bad when you start to see those things. What's your perspective on the way that vet medicine is changing? Because I mean, I might not be battling it every day, but you're in it. You know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a great take on that. I know that there are some corporations that are doing medicine that is very prescribed. And then I know that there are some that are letting the owners have their heads, and letting them do medicine the way they are doing it now. Um, it becomes harder for a small veterinary hospital when they do decide to sell to a private veterinarian. And frankly, you know, veterinary practices are expensive and it's very difficult for veterinarians to purchase them, sole practitioners and so forth. But I don't have a great feed on that. We're in a small town. We're one of, well, in our town proper, we're the only one, I think, legally. Probably there's maybe one or two that are on the outskirts, but it's a big geographic area.
Uh-huh.
I write in the book that we're divided by a drawbridge that goes to the next town, which is bigger,
Uh-huh.
Grand Haven. And that's why we decided to be in Spring Lake, because way back in 1988, a drawbridge was a huge thing, and it still gets stuck up with some regularity. And so people are like, yes, a veterinarian on this side of the bridge. So yeah, we've been lucky. We're able to, be in this great, we are, Spring Lake is a very small town. We're in something called the Tri-Cities. So there's Spring Lake and Grand Haven and Ferrysburg, which is a little town. And we, we've just been blessed to be here all these years. I think veterinary medicine is changing. I'm not a great person to ask about that because I have 3 jobs. I do marketing for our clinic and plan events and so forth. I am now an author. This is my 2nd book, and I also teach dance fitness. So keeping on top of any one of those professions is kind of hard. So I'm doing it
Yeah.
all. So I'm not the best person to ask
Yeah.
about that. I don't know too much. Jim did work for many years at a big university in Michigan, and I had a little bit more insight then, but that's been maybe 3 or 4 years since he had to wander away. He was driving. He was getting up every Wednesday morning and driving 2 hours to go to work and coming back and, you know, kind of leaving the practice. So he decided to ebb away from that. So I am not as up on the way things are going with veterinary medicine as I maybe should be. But I do know that, gosh, in our little area, maybe there's 24 veterinarians in 3 or 4 cities around here, and I think they're all doing the best they can at practicing the great medicine. And I honestly don't know who has been purchased and who hasn't.
What is something that you wish kind of the general public knew about veterinary care or working with a vet? What is something that you kind of wish was out there more prominently?
Um, well, I hope if people read the book, they kind of see how hard we all try. I would say that 97% of clients are understanding and compassionate and know, what people are trying to do. Um, I think I was just talking to someone recently, another interview, and they were like, what do you say to people who say, well, veterinary medicine costs so much? And it's like, yeah, it does, to take your animal in. Um, what Jim told me a long time ago when someone came to me with that was, remember, you're not paying for that 20-minute appointment. You're paying for the knowledge and the years and the experience that went into being able to treat your pet and knowing what to do. And I also was telling that person that when Jim graduated, Jim was a very young veterinarian. He graduated when he was 23 years old from vet school. He'd already done his 4 years. He was accepted early, and um, we had debt. Yes, we had to take out some loans, but not too much. I think I paid the last student loan, with my little checkbook, um, before we opened Harborfront. So he graduated in 1983, and I think I paid it off in maybe early 1988. So 5 years worth of not really expensive debt. Um, but we've had veterinarians working for us that were almost 50 and still paying for their education.
Yeah.
So it is a very expensive thing to do to become a veterinarian. Um, and to know, I guess, as you know, working with what you do, that having a pet is a huge responsibility. There are going to be costs associated with it. Believe me, if we could do everything we do and not charge a cent, we would, but obviously we have to live too. Um, but it's that to please understand that there are responsibilities when you do adopt a pet and take it into your home. It's wonderful that you want to help. And we want everyone to be able to have a pet. And there are a lot of programs that you can, get into if you need some help. But that it is a responsibility, and that to not be surprised if there are some costs associated with it. And that I haven't ever met a veterinarian or a staff member that isn't trying to do the best it can for you. They might be stressed, they might be busy. I'm always amazed when I go into our clinic and see people who are dealing with their own things and how exactly wonderful they are trying to deal and help you with your pet. I guess a little
I
compassion for everyone.
have, yeah, I mean, I have such a, you know, appreciation for vets. I mean, I've worked with, incredible vets over the time that I've had all of my animals, and we've had the fosters. And I always find it so interesting the way that, people will take a cost of something and sort of associate the fact that this item costs what it costs and this service costs what it costs. And that somehow speaks to the morality of that individual who's saying, hey, this is what this thing costs. And that's just such a um, it's such a displaced anger in a lot of ways that's a little hard to reconcile. And I want people to have I want loving people to have animals. I don't want there to be like a monetary barrier for people who are going to take care of animals, but you can't sit here and say that there's not a cost involved, you know? I mean, that's kind of just the reality of it.
Right. Yeah. Luckily, we have so many wonderful rescue operations. And, um, here in Michigan, I'm sorry, I don't know where you're based, but we do have wonderful,
Well, I'm in
wonderful.
Pittsburgh. I'm in the
Okay.
Pittsburgh area, so yeah, a little east of you.
Yeah, a little bit.
I wanted to kind of give you my thoughts on the book, and this is kind of what strikes me about the book. And for anybody that is thinking about buying the book and really understanding what it's like, this was my perspective on it. And what strikes me about the book is the way that you talk about loving animals and caring for animals doesn't come off as just this being bleeding heart. You talk about your husband's roller coaster affection for cats, which is hilarious, by the way. Um, you talk about conversations around euthanasia, and the humanity that is inevitably in, a decision to euthanize an animal. And you talk about even using cadavers as part of dentistry, pet dentistry, the training that Jim did for that. You talk about the bad behavior of pets, like Kelly. You talk about clinic cats, and it just strikes me that when we think about the vets in our lives and the vet techs in our lives, we think that they have some sort of different level of unconditional love that we don't necessarily have. Like they have to access that, or they have the ability to access that. But what I like about the book is that it shows us that vets are human beings too, and that love and tolerance can sometimes have conditions attached to it. It's okay to be a vet and say, "This cat is driving me nuts, and I really don't want you to bring another cat home," as Jim
Right.
appears to have said more than once. And sometimes caring for the living means tampering with the dead and giving you an opportunity to learn from an animal that has passed on. And I just really thought that the book was a really beautiful way to look at veterinary care as human work and like humble work. And I just really I like that perspective on it because this is not all creatures great. This is
Yeah.
a very different book. And I love it for the differences. I love it for the way that you talk about the humanity and the sometimes the inhumanity of what it means to care for our animals.
Well, thank you. And yeah, and thank you for getting that. I was, well, so first of all, I'll tell you, I was concerned about the title. I started writing this book in 2012 before I had any right to even begin thinking about writing a book. I was not an author. I spent my career as a journalist. And when our daughter went off to Michigan State, I remember distinctly sitting on a Sunday morning with coffee. I was working for a magazine, and it was pretty obvious that things weren't going great with magazines at that point. And saying to Jim, I wonder if any of these stories that we have gathered over the years, if people might be interested in those. And he's like, maybe. And I put together a manuscript, long story there, but a good friend of mine now, who I was just meeting then, is a pretty well-known author. And he said, let me show it to my agent. And she's a big time New York City agent. And she said, almost. She didn't say you don't have any right to write a book yet, but I'm sure she was thinking it. She said, I do this and this and this and this. And I'm like, no, I want to. I didn't know how hard it would be to get an agent. But obviously, that was a blessing in disguise because the book wasn't ready. We've had all those more, these many more years of stories. So but one thing she said that I never forgot was, don't ever change your title. And
Yeah.
for people who aren't in the industry, titles are almost always changed. My first book
Uh-huh.
came out 2 years ago. It's called The Girl with Three Birthdays, An Adoptive Daughter's Memoir of Tiaras, Tough Truths, and Tall Tales. And that was originally called The Greatest Centennial Hula Hoop Queen, Two Names, Three Birthdays, and One Big Secret. And I loved my first title, and they had a lot of reasons they liked it, but they didn't love it. And so they changed it. And that's usually what happens. But Don't Look in the Freezer was never changed. And I haven't gotten any negative response. And I'm very grateful for that because what I want people to know is my first chapter in the book is called I Do Not Want to See the Dog Die Either. Um, I won't watch a movie in which something bad happens to an animal. When the sad Humane Society commercials come on, I'm sorry, but I run away and then I run and give more money. Um, I try very hard, I hope, in the book to treat people's hearts with compassion. There is one chapter that does deal with the title, and I think what I've thought is the most interesting thing is that whenever someone says the title, everyone gets it immediately. It's
Mhm.
not even black humor. It's oh yeah, we know a story like that. A lot of
Yeah.
time the story will be is that it's a winter time and a beloved pet has passed and people can't bear to do anything yet. And so that's a lot of what that is. The story is actually based, or the title is actually based on one of Jim's staff members who still works for us. She started working for us as a teenager, and she she knows this. She's our office manager now. She had a terrible crush on my husband when she was a young girl, and he said one day, "Hey, Jody, go get something," just and she had no idea. She had no clue what might happen to the dearly departed, in the midterm here. And so and then there was a scream. But I say if you are in the least bit concerned about that, don't read that chapter. So at least alert people ahead that that's what it
Yeah.
is. Um,
Yeah.
it's death is, as I say, just a part of life. And when you work at a veterinary clinic, it's a daily part of life. And you mentioned about the cadaver work. That is how a lot of studying is done. And my husband, before any lab he ever does or did, would ask for a moment to his students and say, we are going to now be respectful. These animals have passed and they're helping us to help animals in the future. So I do mention all of that, but that's unfortunately part of the job, just like in human medicine. But the book isn't, I hope, in any way going to upset people. And I appreciate that you saw that. I wouldn't want to read a book like that. So I hope that it comes across as humorous and real. And I say right up front, we are not the Harriets. I love those books. I read them every couple of years, but that's not us. We're just extremely human. And I say in the book, profanity is our second language in our house. We're just real. And for
Yeah.
better or worse, that's who we are. And I'm trying to be honest about it. I was a journalist. So when I was trained back in journalism in the 1980s, we were I wouldn't even tell people who I voted for because I didn't want anyone to think I was biased in any way. And so I just want to be fair and say, this is who we are. We're not perfect. I think there's some things
Yeah.
about us that were nice, but we're not perfect.
I love it. I love you have, a whole perspective in here on the judgment that you've had in yourself for some owners and some ways they've acted and some decisions that they've made. And I think that one of the things that happens a lot in animal welfare and in animal rescue is that there is a lot of judgment, right? There's a lot of like um I talked about this with Foster with me. I talked about this with her and it was one of those things where instead of passing that judgment on and saying, well, you should have rescued this animal or you should have not charged for that surgery so that that dog's life could be have been saved, or you should have not made the decision or made the decision to put your pet down or whatever. I think we all have an opportunity to kind of step back and understand that every circumstance is a little bit different. Every situation, people are, for the most part, like you said, the 97% are just trying to do their best. And ultimately, that judgment can be so much more detrimental, that can be so much more hurtful, and is not going to be helpful in any way towards the care of the animal or the well being of the human. And I love your perspective on that because I think that that honest look at it for anybody that does read the book or might find the title unsettling, if you're turning away this book because you find the title unsettling, you need to step back and like, I don't know, touch some grass because y- working with animals and working with love, these living things, sometimes there's going to be unsettling things. And if you can't handle that, then animal welfare is not for you. It's
Yeah.
just not.
I've had really good response to the title. Like I say, I've never really had anyone say, "Ooh." Everyone's based like, "Oh yeah, I get it." I talk in the book about a good friend of my daughter's in growing up, and her mother has become a good friend of mine. And when I first wrote the manuscript all those years ago, she heard about, I think we were in a book club together. I don't remember. And she said, "Oh, have I got a story for you? I've got a hamster in my freezer now for a couple years." And it was winter, and it's very, sweetly done in a American Girl accessory box. The girls were little. And she said, "But we just have never found the appropriate time and, to do it." And so I checked back with her, still there. So still in the freezer.
That story is in the book, and that's
Yeah.
hilarious. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you got to find levity with some of these things because
I
otherwise you're just
reached
gonna
out
like
and I said, "Do you
lose
mind if
your
I tell this
mind.
story again?" Anyone who's in the
I
book with this
know, that's
story,
so
I have
funny.
asked their permission. There's no one that um, and no one that I name that I've asked permission. There's a
Yeah.
few people that I don't know actually, or don't even know their name that I wrote about, and they're kind of some of the strangest stories, but I honestly don't know who they are. I know of them, but anyone who's named in the book, I've gotten their permission to tell their story, so they're okay with it. And she's like, "Yeah, still there."
So what do you want people to get out of the book? What are you hoping will come across when people read the book?
Uh, I hope they laugh. I hope they remember their best friends. We've had 4 rescue doggies, uh, including our latest, Dave. We just did a big event for the rescue that we got Dave from, called Pound Buddies in Muskegon, Michigan. 2 nights ago, we had the fur ball, and they put David's picture up, and they told the truth. David's name is David, but he also goes by Damn It Dave, because that's how and there's a huge story toward the end. Our doggie before David was a greyhound, Gabby, and she was, oh, such a doll. Jim always says the world's most perfect dog. She wasn't, but we thought so. And we went almost a year without a dog. And our daughter, David, we said, was taken in by the Muskegon Heights police officer driving down the street, and he saw a little white terrier cross running with his leg dragging. And we always said was taken into the car. And now we know he was probably arrested. He'd probably done some horrible crime, because that's Dave. And he came in, and Molly, our daughter, took him home to foster him. And she made him pajamas. She cut off, we had to remove his leg. It was unsalvageable. And she made him pajamas, children's pajamas, and sewed up the leg and sent me a picture. And she said, "I found your new dog." And I showed him to Jim. We'd always had bigger dogs. And I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Oh, why not?" The chapter that I'd written about all of our dogs, the 3 dogs before David, was called Houndapalooza. And then that ended the chapter. And he said, "Oh, why not?" And the next chapter is, "Here's why not." David has been a challenge
Oh,
every day of
oh
our life.
no.
We've had him for 8 years, and every day it just gets harder. And we love him. He's a rascal and a scoundrel, and he doesn't really do a lot that's positive. But we love him. He's the dog of my heart. And I guess that's it. We have to love the rascals and the scoundrels, and, give them a chance. Um, Even if everyone else, we are so blessed on either side of us to have neighbors who love Dave, or at least tolerate him. Especially the gentleman who lives, he's going to be 90 in a couple weeks, actually. And he's like, "Now, Dave." And Dave's like, "Uh-huh." He doesn't listen to him at all. But we're so blessed that they understand Dave. We can't allow Dave to go. We live on a bayou, and we can't just let him out in the yard at all. We have to put him on a leash and walk him around, because he'd be gone. So even at age 9, but I guess that's what it is. I guess just to give those a chance that maybe you wouldn't normally. Um, See the humor in it, and have your patience, and If I had any, wish, it would be that. Love
I
the
love that.
scoundrel.
Yeah, love is speaking of a scoundrel that needs a little bit of love, I think now is a really good time to do our foster spotlight. And Patty has been kind enough to bring us a puppy called Molly. And Molly is also at Pound Buddies, the same rescue that Dave was at. And let's take a look at Molly here. So I think hold on, it's not quite loading the best.
I have a
See
little
here.
information if you need it.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us what you know about Molly?
Yeah, I reached out today to Pound Buddies, which is in Muskegon, Michigan, and they said Molly is somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. She's dog friendly. She has moderate energy, so unlike Dave, who has super high energy. She is all white, a mixed breed. She's got all her vaccinations or health checks. And they can, anyone who's interested can reach out to poundbuddies.org and fill out an application. And they'd love to get her a home. I guess she's been there a little while. So, their number is 231-724-0384 if they'd like to call. But yeah, Pound Buddies is an amazing rescue. We have so many wonderful rescues here in Michigan, but in this part of the state, Jim has worked very closely with them, and we went to their fur ball the other night and gave 100% of the pre-sales of Don't Look in the Freezer to them that night. So, and they needed it.
Oh,
They were
that's
looking,
awesome.
yeah,
That's
that's one of my
awesome.
missions with this book. You probably know this. Creative people just don't earn as high as salaries as scientific people. I've never had a huge salary. I've
Right.
always been a writer, designer, and so forth. And so this is one of my goals with this book. I've got a few different things lined up so that I can I can give back a little bit for organizations that helped, you know,
Well,
people
that's
don't feel
awesome.
free. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know,
so
right? Well, I appreciate you bringing Molly to our attention. And she's a beautiful white pitty. And she just deserves a loving and wonderful home. So if you're in the Michigan area and you are interested in meeting Molly, I will be putting the link for her profile in the show notes. I will also be putting Patty's website in the show notes for those that are interested in pre-ordering the book and making sure that Patty has an opportunity to donate a lot of these proceeds over to Pound Buddies and other rescues in the area. But Patty, is there anything that you'd like to leave everybody with today? Is there anything that you'd like to pass on about the book or about being a vet's wife or about just anything in the animal welfare space that you'd like to leave us with?
well, I thank you for what you do. Not really. I'm excited to be able to share the book. It is a lot of work. Someone said something about a fun hobby. I'm like, well, kind of. Writing a book is a business. It's a lot of work, and I'm glad to have it, especially at this stage in my career. I Every person who reaches out to me, like you, I'm learning myself, and adopt, don't shop, please, if you can. Do what you can to help those that don't have a voice. And our daughter, actually, we all have rescued dogs. She actually rescued a dog last year from the meat trade in China. So,
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing.
Culliver, yes, and he's picked up. She was uh, has a dog, Cooper, who she was raising to be a seeing eye dog, leader dog for the blind in Michigan. And Cooper was what we call career changed. It
Oh,
wouldn't have been
yeah.
a good thing. So Cooper
Yeah.
now lives with us. We have David. We do have a wonderful Siamese cat. But yeah, please, do what you can to help these animals. I will too. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that we were able to connect. And if you have somebody in mind that I should be talking to, listener, like Patty, please make sure that you're emailing me at the Foster Files Podcast at Gmail. You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can find us now on YouTube. You can see Patty's face and you can see the front of this amazing book, Don't Look in the Freezer, which it's just such a great read. Follow us on Instagram at the Foster Files Podcast. But Patty, I really appreciate your time today and I appreciate the copy of the book. I really am enjoying it so much. And thank you for the work that you and Jim and Molly are doing. And I wish you all the success in the world.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate the time you took tonight to talk to us. Thank you. You're one of the first. We're just starting this season. My book launches April 28th, so a little less than a month from now. So getting going with
Yay!
everything that goes with launching a book, and it's a joy, and especially
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, congratulations on the book. It really is a wonderful read. And everybody, please remember, be kind to yourself and be kind to animals.